This episode is brought to you by the shows of the You Run Podcast Network, all available at yourunpodcast.com. Whether it's true crime or film reviews, even TV series deep dives, the You Run Podcast Network has you covered. So go and check out yourunpodcast.com today. It's finally happened. The listeners have broke me. They've given me a movie that I have no joke this week.
I don't think there's anything you could say that would give a light heart to this movie. I think it's been traumatic, to say the least.
Yeah. The only thing I can guarantee is that this episode is going to literally suck ass.
You still went there.
I did.
You want to die tonight?
The dad jokes he tells sets the scene. I hang on every word lost in the screen. The passion for fear is contagious enough. You make me believe in Mark's overblown roundups. You run podcasts or a movie review, unveiling facts and playing games too. Your words paint pictures of darkness and dread, leaving me grinning long after I fled.
Hello and welcome to the You Run Podcast Horror Movie Review. My name is Scott.
And my name is Mark.
And this is an interactive horror movie review show where you follow us on Instagram at You Run Podcast. You select the movies we review. And I kind of hate you all this week, but we'll talk about that in a minute. It's been rough. This week has been hard, man.
Yeah. I've had a hard week anyway. It's peak summer season. I'm constantly outdoors in the sun and I just didn't need this. I'll be honest with you. I didn't need this movie in my life this week.
The best bit is that you messaged me at like 5:10 this morning. Like, I'm watching it now. I was like, mate, you cannot start your day watching this movie.
That's how busy my week's been. I had no other choice. I mean, we're reaching the final days now of baby number 2 arriving in the household. So we've got I think maybe 2-3 weeks. So I'm just currently doing the nursery out. So I'm coming in from work and then I'm decorating the nursery. I've got carpet fitters books and it's just a constant chasing my tail trying to get prepped. And then we just work being like, how's this week? I was like, oh God, I've got to do it. I need to watch the Huma Centipede. And I was like, I can't. And then it got to Thursday night and I kept putting it off. And it was like, right, looks like I'm setting my alarm for 5 a.m. to get up and watch the Huma Centipede.
And that just goes to show you how dedicated we are to this. To this show.
It was the worst decision of my life at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Well, when you messaged me, I read the message, I laughed and replied, "You're a machine." Like, how? Like I say, this is an interactive show. You can get involved in the show by following us again on Instagram at You Run Podcast. You need to follow Mark while you're there as well. He's at Reviews from the Crypt and at VHS from the Crypt. You can get in touch with us by sending us an email, which I don't know why I say because no one ever emails us, but it's yourunpodcast@gmail.com. You can also send us an audio DM on X or on Instagram. Push and hold the microphone button in the DM section and we'll get your message. And we have some this week. In fact, we have quite a few this week. So we're going to kick things off with Becky.
Hi guys, me again. Just to say, oh my God, Mark, you made me feel so old saying that you grew up watching My Wife and Kids when that's surely must have only come out in the 2000s. I'm so old. A great episode, as always, with Get Out. Brilliant film. I really enjoy all of Jordan Peele's films. But I do find I don't always get them the first time round or get that hidden message. So I actually often enjoy them more the second time round. Once I know what's coming, I enjoy it kind of probably in a different way because you lose that element of surprise, but I feel that I notice things more, if that makes sense. But yeah, I think he's a great director and I really love Get Out. And I loved your episode.
Oh, very kind of you. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Jordan Peele's, like I said on the episode, he's a really good director. But I think he needs a new writer.
Yeah. I completely agree with that statement.
Let's go with Dave next. This is Dave B Movies, and that was Becky from the Girl and the Gay podcast, who you should all be listening to. Go to yourunpodcast.com, click on the Girl and the Gay. So this is Dave B Movies.
Hi guys, great show as usual. Just listening to the Get Out episode, and for me to receive a spoiler to a film that I watched and enjoyed is shocking. The grandparents, the servants, well, definitely to rewatch it. Keep up the good work.
Again, I'd seen it. That was the second time, and I only picked it up on the second watch.
Yeah, amazing. Like spoilers that were spoilers for people who've even watched it, which is fabulous. We enraged my co-host over on True Crime quite a bit, and we had several messages from Heather. I'm only going to play two of the messages we got because I didn't think one of them was she would like to be played on the air because she used some choice language to particularly describe you. Actually,
that doesn't surprise me.
I'm going to play the first message. So this is what Heather had to say.
Okay, so I just have to stop the podcast for a minute, and maybe I'm going to be wrong in stopping it before I hear the rest of what you guys are about to say. But you guys are talking about how, you know, the garden keeper, the groundskeeper, which was the grandfather, he was basically being very, very violent, and then it's like he switched. But I think it's because there at the end when Rose is on the ground, it's because, like, the person he is, he's trying to come back out. Like, he's trying to get out of that body. It's like his mind is not all there. You know, obviously the doctor did like a lobotomy type thing on him, switch the brain. So it's like, I think that's why the mood changes. Am I wrong? I don't know. You just tell me. Ugh, bye.
Yeah, maybe you shouldn't have paused before sending that message.
And that is what you replied. You replied, maybe you shouldn't have paused because we covered all of that. And all that did was just enrage Heather. So she come back at you.
I never have any regrets, Mark, for pausing and being wrong in quotations. But also, like, you guys, I just don't understand. I think it might be more that I'm going to pick on Scott than you, Mark, actually. Is like, Scott is so finicky about, like, all the horror movie. It's like, Get Out is not about, like, it's not Jason or Freddy or Michael Myers. Like, it has a bigger message to it, and I think that that's maybe why it doesn't showcase the kills as well, and it's not like as gory and all this kind of stuff. But it's like, come on now, Scott, I know you can hear me from the great beyond. Anyways, I love the movie though. I've rewatched it a million times and I like it. That's all I have to say. I'm trying to be nice.
That's okay. People are allowed to like different things.
They are. The group chat continued where me and Mark kind of poked Heather a little bit, and then Heather unleashed.
The thing is, she kind of makes it obvious when she's in a vulnerable position where she needs attacking, and you can see when she's biting, and you only need to do a certain amount of little things to tip her over the edge. And that was one of those days, and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, I did as well. Heather's not very well at the moment. For anyone who's curious, Heather's got a sickness bug and she's like suffering with high temperatures. And so, Heather, we're sending our love. We do love you, really, and you know that.
I'm feeling a bit bad now.
Yeah, you horrible, horrible person, just poking her and being mean. If you're watching this on YouTube, this is our remastered episode. This will have lots of cuts and edits of the movie spliced in. How the hell I'm going to do that this week, I'm not entirely sure.
I don't think you can.
I'll try, but...
Be sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already.
How this works, if you've never listened or watched before, we'll give you a brief synopsis of the movie. We'll tell you what we liked, what we didn't like. We have interactive features. We have No, we don't have caption this. We have cover notes back today, and it is the best decision I've ever made in my entire life to put it on this episode. We also give you some facts. Then we give you a roundup and scores, and I'm distracted because Mark is trying to kill a fly.
I've been trying to ignore it, but there's like a fly in here somewhere, and I feel like I'm like on that Breaking Bad episode where it's just like the fly, and I just keep seeing it. It just landed on the top of my mic, and I was like, "You're very casually coming too close to me. You won't go away." So if you
I'm
see
gonna,
me doing this a lot in the episode, that's why.
I'll enhance the audio. Maybe he had something to say.
Yeah, maybe.
There is no clever synopsis this week. I tried so hard to make arse to mouth on this scale funny, but I just can't. Like I tried
No.
so hard. A surgeon / mad scientist kidnaps 3 tourists and stitches them into a centipede arse to mouth shape monster. His reason for this is he's long dreamt of creating a creature with a single digestive tract. Banned in multiple countries across the globe, the roughest watch I've had in so long. Today we're covering the Human Centipede.
Yay.
Where do you want to start? Like, do you want to start at the front, at the end, or in the middle?
I think for once we're going to start with a little bit of setup for this movie, because this is a movie that a lot of people sort of turn themselves away from and call it like disgusting and pointless and just all out vulgar. And to be honest with you, some of the times it is those things. It was back then. Some of the times it is those things. But I think if you strip it down to its core, this is actually a really, really impressive horror movie.
Do you know, as much as it pains me to say it, because I am very much in the camp of this is awful and I'll never, ever, ever seek this out to watch it again. And I'm glad it's done now. But the build, like the build and the anticipation up to when we get just is really good. Like even at like the opening segment where you get him sat in the car, like being all sad over his 12-legged dog that
Which was
passed
also
away.
very strange.
Yeah, and then he takes the truck driver. He gets the truck. Like all of that's great. I do have issues with the 2 girls. I find them very. I don't know what the word is. Like they're very vacuous as characters. They don't.
I have no idea what vacuous means.
Empty. They don't do anything that makes me go, I really care about you. I mean, don't get me wrong.
No.
I feel sorry for everybody
Involved,
contained within the Human Centipede. But like, if you had a really strong actress, take like, I don't know, let's go Terrifier, because that's on the same level of like violence. If you had like a character like Lauren Lavera, who's a very good actress who can really make you care about her character, and you stick her in the middle of the Human Centipede, this movie is 100 times more horrific than it already is.
Yeah, I don't think we need it to be any more horrific than it actually is, if I'm honest with you. But I agree with what you're saying. I think the 2 American girls who do become part of the Centipede, they're not quite investable as characters, I don't think. I think from the moment they're introduced, qualities about them that keeps you. I think it's hard to say keep rooting for them in a standard sort of horror sense, because given the situation, you wouldn't wish this upon anybody. So you're rooting for them all the way through. But I think I found myself personally more concerned for the guy at the front. And I think because he's the only one who actually has any dialogue throughout once the surgery is proceeded, you kind of feel more like he's the front runner, and he gets a more serviceable arc as well in terms of by the time we get to the end.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, it falls under the point where everything about it's great. The acting is all right in most places, especially from everybody barring the 2 girls. It just feels like they were like the kind of B-movie slasher characters out of the group. And because everybody else around them is actually as impressive as they are, it makes them stand out a lot more than they need to.
Yeah, and the thing is, like the whole movie, like the centipede bit aside, there is lots of other disturbing shit in this movie. You've got 2 girls traveling alone. They're traveling across Germany and they want to go to a nightclub. The bit where they break down and the guy pulls up next to them. Oh man, he is the absolute worst, most horrific. Like they could have gone a completely different direction with this movie and still made it as unsettling and horrible as it is. Like he's there and they're going, can you help us change our tire? And he's like, oh yeah, I've seen a video with you two American girls. Yeah, you like to play with dick, don't you? You're like, what are you doing?
He starts wagging his tongue at them through the window. He's a bad man. He is a bad man.
And then he just abandons them and just drives off and leaves them in the rain.
Yeah.
Stupid decision making. They walk off through the forest. What? Like we had this in Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey as well. They're on a road, and instead of following the road back the way they came or in the other direction, they go cross-country hiking through the woods. Why?
I never understand this when it's done in horror movies either. Surely you just stay on the path hoping that a car will come past at some point. It's like, where are you taking a shortcut to? You're in a forest, which probably has only one way in and one way out. And you've just left the way in and the way out.
Do they not know? Don't stray from the path, lad. Like, fuck's sake.
Yeah, it's again, there is some like kind of tropey elements about this, but I think that's one thing that surprised me more about it this first time around, because this is only the second ever watch for me for Human Centipede. The first time I watched it, I thought it was great, but it was too shocking because I didn't expect it. So the first time I watched it, it really shocked me, and it's I'll be honest with you, it's probably one of the first horror movies I've seen since you get that childhood experience of being scared by a film. I wouldn't necessarily say I was scared, but I was really uneasy all the way through, and it stayed with me, man. It was a film that I kept thinking about long after I'd seen it, and I was like, and I think that's more down to the conclusion because it's such an awful ending for everybody involved that you can't help but process it long after the credits have rolled. But it does have that sort of standardized horror setup throughout, in terms of everything kind of falls into place as it would as a slasher movie kind of does, but then you interject this gory element throughout, and that overshadows everything else around it. And I think that's a little bit of a shame, but also a little bit of a blessing, because it helps it stand out from the group. But in a way, because of how vile and disgusting the segment is, it's turned off a big percentage of audiences that don't appreciate this movie for what it actually is when you strip it down.
Yeah, the problem is with this movie, you see the cover, you've heard the stories, you may have seen a clip or two online, and everyone's reaction is exactly the same.
Nasty!
Yeah. And I bet there's a lot of people out there who say, oh yeah, Human Centipede, it's absolutely just fucking disgusting. Yes, it is, but I can guarantee maybe 60-70% of the people who make those statements have only just seen little snippets of the film on the internet and stuff like that, and have made their own conclusion regarding the substance of the movie overall.
Yeah, I'm going to praise the guy who plays the doctor, the mad scientist. He's
brilliant.
So good, so chilling. Like the bit where so the girls go to his house, he drugs them, he gives them like date rape, but like the bit where he gives them the war, he asks them if they want a drink because they want to cool the recovery truck, and he gives them the drink, and then the girls one drinks it, one drinks some of it, and she's like, I feel really sleepy. What's wrong with me? And he casually sits on the back of the sofa and goes, oh yeah, that's Rohypnol, the date rape drug. And our other friend's like, what? Like all of that, like he's so
nonchalant about his actions.
Yeah, he's like, and he's treating them like they're lab rats. Like he just wants them for his experiment. And when he does get them all subdued, and he's got the guy he caught earlier, the trucker, and the two girls, and he explains the procedure, like with diagrams and everything, like that is horrific. And all the way through this, I wanted the why. And I'm really annoyed because his why is just simply.
I mean, the thing is, it kind of is and it isn't.
That's all he says. It's like there's no plot or reasoning behind him doing it, just that he wants to. And that's.
I mean, he does have a segment where he explains how he's a leading surgeon in separation of Siamese twins.
Yeah,
and how his idea is to then reverse a process and put people together rather than separating them. So there is a little bit of a motive in it there. I mean, it's not a motive that I can get behind, but
Why? Like your job and your like. Let's take you for example. You are a carpenter, like Jesus. You are a very good carpenter. I have seen your work. You're very good at what you do. Would one day you just go, do you know what? Instead of being a carpenter, I'm going to plant trees. Like, what the fuck? It's such like, why?
Well, yeah, I know. I mean, yeah. Yeah, but you could then have the motive of like, well, I've destroyed so many and I've cut down so much. I'm going to now rebuild the planet. Apart
Yes,
from
but
my motive would have a little bit of levity to it. His doesn't necessarily work in the same context.
no, he's helping people who are attached together, who want to be separated. He's helping them fulfill their dream. Now he's kidnapping random tourists and stitching them together arse to mouth.
I have to think based on the fact that it's set in Germany and due to the age of the surgeon, I think it's heavily implied that he is some sort of Nazi science doctor who used to do all the awful experiments within the torture chamber and stuff like that. I think that's kind of what they're implying without necessarily saying it outright on the film.
Yeah, and I think the thing I forgot was I always remember they were like sewn together and then there was wrapping around their heads. I forgot that he separates parts of the arse cheek and brings them up onto the sides of the cheek and stitches them there so they can't pull
And
away.
removes the teeth. The scene
see,
where he's pulling out the teeth is fucking awful.
I forgot that bit of it. So I was like, oh, okay, this is the bit where he sews the master. And then he explained it. I'm like, oh, okay. Because I'm in my head, I'm going, I'll lose my lips. Like I will sacrifice my lips to get out of that scenario.
Yeah, no, he makes it so you can't. Your face is sutured together from top of ear down to arsehole. The nicest way possibly to present that. I mean, it's vile. It's vile as a concept, and I think that's what makes you so uneasy throughout. Is the whole idea of being placed in this situation, and you always have that conversation with yourself. Is like, I would want to be at the front, but I think they do an excellent job of showcasing how awful it is just to be at the front as it is to be in the middle or to be at the back. I mean, the back is definitely the shortest straw in terms of meal times. But
you say
like
that,
the girl who's in the middle has multiple surgeries, so she's getting both ends of the pain.
Yeah, and I'm not being funny. If you are in the back,
Eat my ass!
like the thing is, like the whole where this concept come from. I'll talk about it in facts because there's actually a decent story behind where this come from. The director who made this and wrote this he's not a sick guy. It all come on the back of a joke, but we'll talk about that later. But it is disgusting, and like once he's got them all stitched together, we're going to have to talk about it, and I don't want to because I'm going to gag. I gagged when I watched it multiple times. I was nearly sick. He stitches them all together. He gets them up and moving around, and he feeds them. He feeds the guy at the front, and the guy needs to go. And the guy saying, "I'm sorry,"
and he's praying as he's doing it and asking for forgiveness. It's just awful.
And you can see the girls like the poo. No. Like you know that he's pooing.
It's awful. Mouth. It's awful.
And the doctor makes it worse because he's like, "Yes, feed her." And I'm like, "Oh, honestly, it is the worst." That like literally the second that scene comes on, I'm gagging, I'm retching, I'm looking away. But I don't know if you do the same as me. When it's something that's really awful like this, I go, "Oh, I need to watch it. Oh, I need to see what happens."
Yeah, it's a hard not to look away scene, even though you know how graphic and awful it is. I mean, for me, I was quite grateful that this only happened the once. In my memory, for some reason, I thought this happened multiple times throughout the movie, this scene, in varying degrees of uncomfortableness, but it does only happen the once, which
it's in
was a
the
sigh
other
of relief
movies.
for me on the second watch.
Yeah, I think it's in 2 or 3 there, where you have like a whole poop train where they all poop, and it's not good. And if you are like second in line, like How do you process that in your head? There is nothing you can do.
I would rip out my own throat with my bare hands if I woke up in this situation, I think. I would
Yeah,
literally claw my own throat from my neck to kill myself before anything
yeah.
even happened.
It,
Because the
it's
thing is, even if you survive a situation like this, you are going to have the scars on your face as a daily reminder every time you look in the mirror of what's happened. Like we talk about horror movies all the time and how people survive and things like that. And 9 times out of 10, when you're watching a horror movie, granted, yeah, there will be some sort of PTSD, some sort of trauma going on for the rest of your life for the situation that's happened to you. More so when you talk about like rape, revenge cases and stuff like that. But I think this is one movie where I would rather die than survive it and live to tell the tale. I don't think I would ever mentally be able to recover from this situation.
no, it it's rough. It's rough, and like the torment continues. Like he puts them in a cage, and them in the cage is bad. And like when they were stood in the cage, it's nighttime. All that was going through my head is, how do you sleep? Like if you're the guy at the front, you lay down, you've got something attached to your ass. Like you can lay down, you can fall asleep. If you're in the middle, how do you possibly get any sleep ever?
I think the thing that's the most hardest about the situation for everybody involved is the language barrier because the guy at the front is Japanese or Chinese. I don't want to specify because I don't know. They don't say in
Korean,
the
I
movie.
think he is.
Yeah, so like there's a language barrier. So anything he says, they don't understand anyway. So it's
No.
not like he can either communicate to the following party to explain to them what he's going to do so they can follow suit. They all just have to follow his lead. And they showcase that quite well later on in the movie when they're trying to make their escape and he's having to raise his hands and say, I, or whatever it is he says. I thought that was really,
Yeah.
really poor imitation.
The thing is, though, they set that up. It's actually the doctor that teaches them how to do the thing that allows them to escape when he's trying to get the guy to fetch his paper. And he's sticking the paper in his mouth, and then he stands on his back, and he's almost like 1, 2, 1, 2,
Yeah.
1, 2. Like he teaches them how to get away. The swimming pool. I don't know why the doctor was naked. There's no need for him to be naked. Like,
Nope. Just another inclusion of awkward, unnecessary moments in the film.
it starts off, and you've got the human centipede stood on the side of the pool, and the Korean guy at the front's trying to get a bolt off of the sun lounger, and the guy's swimming up and down. You see it from a side view, and then they do this just shot where they just come right up over the top of him, and it's just naked ass with a human centipede at the side, and I'm like, I am about as uncomfortable as I could possibly get. There is not much more you can do now to make this any worse.
No. I mean, we talk about how graphic this movie is, but if you actually break it down, a good percentage of the movie is based on build-up. Like the human centipede is sort of like the third act of the movie. The first sort of 2/3 is really, really good stuff in terms of horror movie level. Like you've got her breaking free from the bed, the hospital bed, and then she jumps into the pool and stuff like that. Whole escape segment is really, really good.
I love that, where she locks herself in a room and he's banging on the door, and he basically says, if you don't come out, I am going to pull all of your teeth out and make your life so, so, so bad. And she doesn't come out. And then she basically opens the curtain to smash the window. And he stood there with a tranquilizer gun. And you're like, oh, shit. Like,
And this is a scene where he breaks down to her that she's going to be in the middle. He's like, I couldn't decide who was going to be in the middle, but I'm going to put you in the middle because of your escapades. You are going to endure the most suffering. You're the one who's going to have multiple operations in order to make this process work. And it's just like, oh, God, I feel so bad for this woman. I mean, she manages to get a little bit further and get into the pool, doesn't she? Which, again, is a really cool scene. And in that moment, I was like, drown yourself in this pool because I know what's coming for you in the next 45 minutes and it's not going to end well.
the thing it went through my head, and I know I would have done it, and I know this makes me a bad person, and I'm sorry to anyone listening. Like, I'm genuinely like,
I'm so sorry.
Like, I really am sorry. But when he explains the procedure and he shows the diagram with the front person at the front, person in the middle, person at the end, in that situation, if I thought this was going to happen, I 100% would put my hand up and go, I'll go in the front, please.
Yeah.
I would volunteer.
Yeah.
And fuck anybody else who's in that scenario. Sorry, you're going behind me. Because there's no way I'm going in the middle and there's no way I'm going at the back.
Yeah, and I mean, even at the back, you talk about how like she's got the better version of the situation in comparison to the middle segment, but she's got 2 bodies worth of digested feces coming through her, which she gets ill from. It kills her at the end. She gets infections in her face, and he says she's dying. I'm going to have to find a replacement and all the rest of it. So even much as the painful segment is of being in the middle, the back's got to be the worst, surely.
Yeah, just. Oh! That's where I am. This entire movie has just made me like, ugh.
Yeah,
but it's a good movie. Like,
it's a fantastic movie. It really, really is when you strip it down. I mean, it's hard to say it's a fantastic movie overall because of the contents of it. But I do feel like you say, if you strip it down to its horror roots, it's probably one of the better horror movies to come out in the past 20, 30 years, I would say, in terms of its content at its core. I mean, let's talk about the ending for a little bit. Let's talk about the ending, because this is, in terms of what horror movies are, there isn't many of them that I walk away from and constantly play over in my head and question what happens next. But this is one of those movies that I do. And especially after the death of the guy at the front, because I think his death is very monumental. And how I said earlier, like, he was the one that I was most invested in. So his closing arc here feels very poignant.
Yeah, well, you get the cops show up, and like the whole cop thing, I think is a very weak link how they got the police there. But it kind of works. I wasn't fully invested. Like, I didn't buy the fact the cops would be so pushy over his car may have been seen where the truck had disappeared. There was reports of screaming in his house. And as much as
I didn't buy into that either, because they're screaming downstairs in a bit. Then again, there was in the rest of the house screaming. So I suppose that is pretty plausible. I mean, they must have had some strong evidence to be as insistent with him as they were in this scene.
Yeah,
I mean, if you're talking about leaps in logic, before we go any further, the biggest leaps in logic in this entire fucking movie that bothered me more than anything at all this time around. How the fuck do they get from on the table and down onto the floor multiple times in this movie? Because there is no way this skinny little German scientist is picking them up and putting them on there as a threesome.
The same way you'd pick up a small puppy.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, you see one scene when the police officers come and they're on the surgeon's table and he's inspecting them to sort of like just a general medical check to see how they're all doing. The next thing, they're crawling around on the floor and they're all like walking off. I'm like, how the hell did you get off that 4-foot high table?
I genuinely, that has never crossed my mind until right this second now. And in my head, I'm working through it in my head where the guy hangs off and the girl holds his feet and he puts his hands down and then he takes a couple of, like, I'm logistically working out like they move very much like a centipede would.
Nah, that arsehole is tearing off immediately if you try and pull off a maneuver like that.
Yeah, if I'm honest, I think I'd rather just try to pull off. I'd be trying to do a backflip if I had someone attached to my ass.
That's it. You just throw yourself off the front person, and it just pulls half your face off. Yeah, fucking awful. But at least you ain't gonna eat shit for the next 3 or 4 days.
Yeah, and yeah, I've got a little bit more junk in my trunk where I've taken the sides of someone's cheeks off. But hey, at least I'm on 2 feet and I can make a run for it, because their escape is harrowing.
Yes.
Like, because they're connected together. That crawl up the stairs where you say he's shouting out which hand and which leg he's doing next, and the doctor's trying to get to them, like, that is like the most horrific, awful, nerve-wracking thing. And then when the doctor does get to them and the guy at the front realizes he's got nowhere to go, he's like, he just basically reflects on his entire life. He's like, I've been a really bad man, I've been a bad father, I've been not a nice guy, and this is my punishment, and I want my punishment to end. And then just picks up a bit of broken glass and just corner to corner on his neck, and it's one of the few movies, like, suicide in movies is very difficult to justify. Like, you watch movies where people have some emotional trauma and you're like, they really need to get some help and they need to sit down with someone. But this is one of the few movies where I see him do it and I'm like, I kind of don't see any other way out for you at this point. Like, I get it. I understand why you've done that.
No, there is no escape from this situation, regardless of the outcome of the doctor or anything else. It's either he's going to kill you, you're going to die from infection, or you're going to have to kill yourself to end your suffering. And I get it, and as dark and as bleak as it is, you're right. It is the one time in movies where it genuinely makes sense. You mentioned about him cutting himself with the glass as well, which just made me remember how clever the full circle element is of their escape this time around. Because the first time she smashes a window with the lamp, and as they're doing the escape, she's giving him directions on which way to go to take lead, and then she points to the lamp as if to say, get the lamp, smash the window. That's what I did earlier, and that's how I got out into the garden. Which, by the way, again, earlier on, she was home and dry until she decided to go back for her friend. I mean, I get it, but you would have been much more beneficial going out, getting help, and then coming back for your friend.
Would you have come back for me, or would you have come back with the police a day later?
Knowing what was coming our way, mate, you'd have had to endure that for 24 hours at least.
Fabulous. Well, which is fine because I volunteered to be at the front, so it's
all right. But I like how when they make their second attempt at the escape, you see the guys come in and change the glass, and you don't think anything of it. You think he's just cleaning up the mess, but he's replaced it with shatterproof glass. So he's learned from the mistake that he made the first time around. He's now replaced it with reinforced glass, and they can't escape with the lamp. He's repeatedly hitting it. It's almost like it's bulletproof. Barring the little shard that he uses to cut his neck. But then the next segment, obviously, this is sort of like the closing arc now. The doctor is frantic at this point. The police break in, which was a cool little cat and mouse with the police. I like this inside his house. It was like Silence of the Lamb-esque kind of closing act with the showdown of those two. But it's the very, very closing scene where the final centipede dies due to the infection. The police are dead, the doctor's dead, which gets an epic kill shot to the head. And you're just left. The credits start rolling, and as the credits are rolling, all you hear is the cries of the girl in the middle. And it's just like, you've got nothing there to get out of the situation. You've got the dead weight at the front, you've got the dead weight at the back. You either hope that somebody comes and finds you, or you literally just starve to death.
Yeah.
And you've got a rotting corpse in front of you, and we know what happens to dead bodies during death as the process starts to take form. She's going to digest some foul, nasty stuff over the course of the next 12 hours.
She is.
How can you say you love her if you can't even eat her poop?
What the hell is that from?
The lengths I went to get sound bites this week is almost the lengths I went to watch this movie. I don't really have a whole hell of a lot else to say about this. Do you?
No, not in terms of the key points that I want to talk to about throughout the episode. I've got things that I want to discuss in roundup and stuff, but nothing. I think we've said everything we need to say without going into disgusting details that would tune out listeners.
Yeah, I'm not being funny. We briefly touched on it, and I was that close.
Yeah,
a little bit more, and I'd have been proper gagging and done. So yeah, we're going to take a break, a much needed one for a change. After this episode, why not check out our resident girl and our resident gay with the Girl and the Gay podcast. This is a podcast where Jay and Bex break down movies of all genres in a funny, entertaining way with lots of interactive features. So go and check out the Girl and the Gay podcast. Also available on the You Run Podcast Network, Video Tastings, a channel hosted by Gareth. This is the world of VHS like never before. From his extensive collection through to live watch-along parties, deep dives into special features and so much more. If you love VHS and retro videos, this is the place for you. So check out Gareth at yourunpodcast.com, along with all the other You Run Podcast Network members.
So please go to You Run. Do you like that? I do like that.
It is very much Hallmark movie. That was what I was going for.
Yeah, it's like an infomercial during Dawn of the Dead. I love it.
Go and check out all of the other. God, Mark broke me by commenting how Hallmark my trailer was. Go and check out all of the network members, yourunpodcast.com. While you're there, go and check out our shop as well. We've got link to my movie there. There's loads of stuff there. Go yourunpodcast.com. Go and have a look. We've had loads of hits on the website lately as well, so keep that up because that's great. Cover Note is back. So this was the feature that we tried that was an epic failure, and we blamed it on body bags.
Yes. And I saw you post this and I was like, I'm going to chip in and add my 10th pence worth just so that we get a bit of traction. I looked, there was like 50 comments. I was like, yeah, I don't need to get involved this week.
Yeah, like this is a keeper. You have all made it a keeper. But I am going to say you all need help. You need counseling, some sort of medication. Like there are some issues within these comments. So cover note, for those of you who don't know, is every movie has a cover note. The Human Centipede, it is their flesh is his fantasy. And for this feature, we asked our wonderful listeners to give us a new one. And they did. We're going to start with Never Ending Film Festival. They are an indie movie magazine, and they went with Malcolm in the Middle.
Excellent.
Lady Crisis. This is Lady Crisis of TikTok and Instagram. Brilliant cosplayer, brilliant horror creator. Just when you thought life couldn't get any more shitty. They're just so wrong. We've got R. Geezy, who's the host of a wrestling podcast, a scat-tastic medical marvel.
The possibilities are endless with this movie.
They really are, and I really struggled to narrow them down. We've got Horror UK retailer, does loads of horror merch, and that's Shop of 1,000 Corpses. You'll swallow any old shit.
Oh, that's going to be tough to beat.
That's rough, that one. However, Nerdy Dad 42 had a go. He went with You Never Go Arse to Mouth Unless. They're a mixed fandom account. We've got And Headdraws. I don't know why I picked this one. Anne Headdraws is a makeup effects artist and went with Your Most Challenging Wank to Date.
Oh, no. No. Oh my God.
Dude! What the
fuck? We've got Where's the Horror Section, who's a horror creator on Instagram. All You Can Eat Buffet.
Oh.
Eat my ass!
And finally, we've got the Popcorn Kernels, who's another movie podcast, and they went, You Are What You Eat.
Oh, I like that.
Which again means ass. Thank you very much for everyone who played along this week and made this feature a keeper. This will return. It will pop up when there is a movie that you will have this kind of scope to play with. Yeah, that was that.
I love it. I'm glad it's back. I'm glad it's got the reception it deserves, because I think that's a really, really cool feature that provides a lot of scope, which you've all showcased beautifully for this week's episode.
And I'm glad you convinced me to keep it, because off air I went, it's got to go, and you went, no, it's got to stay. And I went, no, it's got to go. And you went, no, keep it. I was like, fine, we'll try. My exact words were something like, fine, we'll try it one more time, and then I'll prove I'm right. And then I was wrong.
I think it works with certain types of movies. Like if we'd have had that segment for the Rocky Horror Show, for example, that would have been magical. I know the fans and the people who listen could have come up with some amazing taglines for that movie.
Yeah. Let's do some facts. So this is directed by Tom Six. Now, when he had girls come and audition for this role, and guys as well, he showed them a drawing of the Human Centipede to give them context of what they would be auditioning for. He had many actors and actresses basically say "fuck you" and walk out. Like, audition was over. No, I think that's a hard sell, isn't it? Look, see this picture, you're going to be this character in the middle. Like, I'm not in for that.
Yeah, that's like a career killer, isn't it? Let's be honest.
Yeah, pretty much. You're not getting Johnny Depp in this movie. Let's put it that way.
Regardless of whether you get the showcase of being at the front, it's like you're always going to be known as that guy who's shit in that girl's mouth in the Human Centipede.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, just look at Amber Heard. She suffers with that kind of stigma. So when they approached investors, so this was a movie that people invested in to make it happen. When they approached investors, they told them that they're making a film about stitching people together, but at no point did they specify what parts of the person they were stitching together.
Clever, very clever, because if you explain this to somebody, it sounds horrifically uncomprehendable that you could spend an hour and 30 minutes watching this unfold.
Yeah, and Tom Six knew that, so he made a point of whenever someone would go, so what bits are you stitching together? He would just change the subject. Let's not talk about that. Let's talk about this bit of the movie. Really clever.
I mean, I think the title gives it away a little bit.
It does. So the idea for this, Tom Six was discussing with a couple of friends about child molesters. And they were coming up with a couple of beers over fitting punishments that they think child molesters should get. And someone come up with the idea, what you should do is you should fit child molesters into long distance lorry drivers' trucks, big fat guys, and stitch their mouth to their arse because that's what they deserve. And that's where the concept of this come up from. Tom Six went, you know what, that's horrific. And I can make that work.
Yeah, he certainly did.
And if you took that, if he'd taken that one step further and this doctor had been catching paedophiles, I would have a completely different take on this movie.
It flips the entire narrative on its head when you take a Dexter style approach to it, I think. And I think it also it compromises a lot of the empathy that you have with the characters. And I think doing it that way would have just been an out and out almost snuff style movie for the purposes of you are only watching it to gain entertainment and enjoyment from the suffering of others. Whereas having it play out the way it does, for me personally, is a much more investable approach with such a bizarre concept.
Yeah, I agree, but with a slight twist, it's a very different movie. So the director wanted to make sure that his idea was medically possible. So he sent the design of the Human Centipede to some real surgeons and asked if this would it medically work. And they come back.
Because one of the taglines for this movie is 100% medically correct. Is that right?
Yeah, 100% medically accurate. And it is 100% medically accurate in that you could physically do this to people, but they would all die. Like, you could do this, you could physically do this, and it would logistically it would work. Food would go from A through B through C, but A, B, and C would all die either from the procedure or from some sort of infection. Yeah. So yeah, it is kind of medically accurate, but not, because no one's surviving this. Robert Egbert. I don't like Robert Egbert. He's never given a decent review in his life, never been fair with a review. He takes the most epic movie of all time and gives it no stars because he's that kind of guy, or 1 star because that's who he is.
He's a tagline king. He likes to just throw some sort of quote that has the little bit of pizzazz to it that makes people remember what he said, when really it has no substance to it.
His review of the Human Centipede is the first review I have ever read that I actually went, yeah, You got this movie. You completely got it. He refused to give it a rating. He didn't dish out 0 stars. He just refused to rate it, saying that it doesn't matter whether the film is perceived or good or bad. It is what it is. He closed it off by saying, "This film occupies a space in the world where the sun doesn't shine." And
Yeah.
he's nailed it. Like he watched it, he went, "Don't know how to rate this." Like it's a movie. I didn't enjoy it. Yeah, it's dark. That's basically what he said. And yeah, first time ever, decent review from
Yeah.
Robert Egbert.
Well, an honest review from Robert Edgar, anyway.
Yeah. I'm going to let you round this up first because I'm still stuck on what to say.
Yeah, I mean, I've specified a lot of the stuff that I had reserved for my roundup throughout this anyway. But I mean, for me, I do feel like this is a very, very competent horror movie. This is the kind of thing that I've paid attention to more on my second viewing. The first time around, I was just enamored by the shock factor of the film itself. But the second time around, giving it the attention it probably, I wouldn't say deserves, but required from me in the moment, I couldn't help but applaud some of the stuff that was done throughout. I think Tom Six as a director does a really good job. I'm not going to talk about his other work because I have issues with Human Centipede 2 and more so with Human Centipede 3. But I do feel like his first attempt here, he really showcases how competent he is as a director and as a writer, because I think the pacing is really competently done and put together well. The narrative isn't just done for shock value. Yes, there is certainly shock value within this movie, but it's not the key focus of 80% of the film, I would say. So I think Tom Six gets a lot of stick within the horror community as just being the sort of shock jockey kind of guy who just makes disturbing movies. I would like to see him get a chance at making something more mainstream in horror. I wouldn't necessarily that I would expect mainstream quality from him. I just mean more digestible for the masses, so somebody else could kind of look at some of his movies and be like, actually, you know what, this guy is actually good. He's got a vision, he's got an idea, and what he's doing is competent enough.
He'd be good for give him a couple of episodes of the Halloween series.
Yeah, and I would be all for it. If it was announced that he was going to be directing a few of the episodes, I'd be like, yeah, well, I can't wait for that. He's a great director. He's just shadowed by, again, the grossness of the movie's content. I think we mentioned about the casting. I think the Doctor is phenomenal. He's a creepy ass dude, and he portrays that very, very well throughout. And the Korean guy at the front, especially, I don't have names because I was so shocked by the movie. Taking notes was a bit of a task for this one. So I thought he was fantastic. We talked about how mediocre the two girls were, but again, you only really get to see the mediocre level of their acting capabilities more so. I'd say it just stands out mainly in the hotel scene at the beginning when they're talking about the traveling. The stuff when they get to the car and the stuff when they get into the doctor's house is all really, really impressive. But it's just standard screaming and terrified looks and stuff, which where they carry off very well. It's just the dialogue between the two of them feels very unauthentic in the early stages of the movie. It's got a really good score as well to this film, which I think gets overlooked quite a lot, amplifies the tension and fear throughout a lot of the scenes. Overall, I can't believe I'm going to say this about the Human Centipede, but I think it's a very solid horror movie. One that I feel like once you get past that initial dirty, disgusting feeling that it has and that it gives you, it's a fucking quality movie. And I can't help but feel like it deserves better recognitions for its attributes other than the shock factor. And that's what I kind of want to push here is like, if you've seen this movie once and you were completely disturbed by it and you thought it was the most shocking thing ever, you're right. It definitely is those things. But if you go into it on a rewatch, knowing what's coming and knowing how disturbing those segments are, you pay attention a lot more to the filmmaking itself, and it is top tier stuff. And for that reason, I'd be really struggled to give this a low score. So for me, I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. I think it's solid. I think it deserves its place within the horror community. I think people talk about it for the wrong reasons, and I would love to see more people focusing on the right reasons of why this is a great movie. Before you get into your roundup, I just want to say I have seen the rest of the movies. I have seen part 2 and I have seen part 3, and they are just pure shock, disgusting, basically just done for those reasons alone. And that is built upon the reputation that the first movie had, and they had to go into it and then make it bigger, better, more disturbing.
Yeah.
And it's the kind of hype train that I think Tom Six lost himself on as a director and churned out 2 movies that are absolute dog shit. But if you separate those from the first, I think the first movie is fantastic.
Yeah, and I think everything you've said is fair. This movie is a hard watch. Like I am a seasoned horror movie viewer. I've watched the most horrific of the horrific, and this is the one that gets me every time. Like it's the one that makes me gag. It's the one that I lay in bed after I've seen it going, I don't like this. It's like it's so disturbing on so many different levels, even beyond the centipede element of it. And as much as this film is gross and I don't like watching it, and I'll probably won't return to this for a very, very long time, if at all, it does what it sets out to do. It horrified me. It is a scary movie. Casting we've spoken about. I think that the Doctor is fabulous. I think this is very well directed. You're right in the build up and all of the bits before we get to the operation. All of that is fabulous. I think the tail end of the movie, the story of the actual centipede is really good. I think the cops are a waste of time. Like that whole narrative of the police being there is kind of very convenient and also kind of very pointless because they don't do anything.
They don't, but they also give purpose for the conclusion. There is no real end to this movie without their inclusion. Without causing the disturbance that they do, there is no way for this movie to end because this centipede is not equipped to take out this doctor. They can't walk, they're just crawling around aimlessly. Even though they disable him slightly, it's not. All he has to do is leave the room, let's be honest. So I think their inclusion does create a path to a conclusion. So for that reason, they do serve a purpose. But you're right, it does feel very shoehorned in when you're watching it.
Yeah, and I think had they built that a little bit better through the early stages of the movie, maybe the police already suspect him for something, or maybe he's been suspended for medical malpractice or something like that to get the police involved
just
earlier.
Like a bit of an investigation process as to disappearances in the area or something like that.
Yeah,
that would have made it a lot more digestible.
Anything to make it a little bit more tied together. It's not a bad movie if you've got the stomach to watch this. Like I haven't, but if you've got the stomach to watch this sort of movie, this will satisfy you for what you're after. For me, I can't give this a 4 because I rate based on enjoyment. I'm going to give it a 3, and that's all of those 3 points come from the first half of the movie. Like it doesn't lose points for what comes after, but I can't award points for pooing in someone's mouth. I just can't do it. It's all right. What can I say? This is not what I was expecting to say, but this is a 3 out of 5. It's a solid horror movie.
I think that is serviceable scores from both parties. I think I was just as shocked as you are to be coming into this. I was expecting us both to just destroy this.
Yeah.
Because we've recently just done Jordan Peele and we talked about rewatchability and how there is no substance to Get Out and there is no rewatchability to it. This movie has rewatchability. I might go into this a third time around and not have the same approach, but focusing more on the build-up and the story elements to it this time gave me the enjoyment that I needed that I didn't get from it the first time. And I think that's why I'm showcasing my score as high as it is because there is a lot of substance here to this movie other than the reputation that it's garnered over the years.
Yeah,
but yeah,
I
think
agree.
it's solid horror. Solid horror.
It really is. And on that unbelievable note, that is the end of this episode. We are going to be back next week. Before we come back, make sure you go and give us a review on Apple or Spotify, 5 stars if you can. If you go on Spotify, write something nice. Not had anyone write anything for a while now. We're going to be back next week. And next week, we are talking about one of the most mainstream popular movies from the 90s. And I am going to tear it limb from fucking limb because I hate it with a passion.
I won't let you do that. You know I won't.
Yeah, we've also got a guest next week as well, but I'm going to save the guest as a surprise. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for however you consume us. Yeah, and just remember...
How can you say you love her if you can't even eat her poop?
The weirdest soundbite I've ever heard.
We will see you all next time. Bye-bye.
Cheers, you want to die tonight?
Sorry, I cut you off. Do you want to say goodbye?
I did say goodbye.
Yeah, I cut you off, though. The outro jumped in before you said it. So see you all later, guys.
Cheers, guys. See you next week.
There you go.
You want to die tonight?
Jokes you tell sets the scene. I hang on every word lost in the screen. Your passion for fear is contagious enough. You make me believe in Mark's overblown roundups. You run podcasts or a movie review, unveiling facts and playing games too. Your words paint pictures of darkness and dread, leaving me grinning long after I fled. You run podcasts, horror movie review, unveiling facts and playing games too. Your words paint pictures of darkness and dread, leaving me grinning long after I fled. Thank you for taking us on this chilling ride, when nightmares roll free and comedy collide. With your podcast we laugh and cringe, but your content is so good we can't help but binge. You run